Thank you for watching this video. This video briefly introduces you, past and present, of student protests in the world and the impacts on our societies. Please subscribe to our channel. In many societies, young people are often underestimated. They're viewed as powerless, entitled, or even lazy. However, throughout history, students have played a crucial role in some of the most significant protests. They recognize oppression and injustice, organizing in large numbers, and often risking their lives and futures. Here are 10 examples of student protests that had a lasting impact. April 2024, Israel-Hamas war protests on U.S. university campuses. On April 17, 2024, pro-Palestinian Israel-Hamas war protests erupted in the United States. It all began when the New York City Police Department entered the Columbia University students' encampment to conduct mass arrests during a pro-Palestinian campus occupation. The protesters demanded that the university divest from Israel. Similar protests spread to other universities, including New York University, Yale University, Emerson College, MIT, and Tufts University. Over 40 campuses established protest camps, and arrests occurred at various locations. The movement gained international attention, with protests spreading to Europe, Australia, and Canada. And criticism came from both sides, including condemnation from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and support from U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. Police responses faced scrutiny, and the protests led to the closure of Columbia University and Cal Poly Humboldt for the remainder of the semester. The 2024 student protests in U.S. universities have been significant, reflecting the activism and concerns of young people. Here are some key points about these protests and their potential impact on society. Pro-Palestinian protests. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations have spread across U.S. campuses, with hundreds of arrests at universities nationwide. Columbia University has been the epicenter of these protests, where students demand the school cut ties with Israeli academic institutions and divest from entities connected to Israel. Students from diverse backgrounds, including Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, and Muslims, have united to decry Israel's actions. Challenges to university leadership. At Columbia University, the Faculty Senate is expected to vote on a resolution admonishing the school's president for her decisions related to the protests. University leaders have faced criticism for authorizing police to shut down student protests on Campus 24. Broader implications. The protests highlight the boiling anger within U.S. society over the Biden administration's Middle East policies. These demonstrations may impact public opinion and influence political decisions regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The involvement of students in such movements can shape future leaders and foster a sense of social responsibility. Calls for change. Beyond the specific issue of Palestine, student protests often lead to broader discussions about human rights, justice, and global affairs. They encourage dialogue, raise awareness, and challenge institutions to be more responsive to student voices. In summary, the 2024 student protests serve as a reminder of the power of collective action and the role young people play in shaping our societies. Their demands for change can influence policies, foster empathy, and inspire future generations to advocate for justice and equality. Youth protests in Thailand in 2020-22. In 2019, Thailand transitioned from a military dictatorship to a semi-elected government, although military influence still dominates. Authoritarian tactics persisted, leading to mass demonstrations in 2020. Here are the key points about the youth-led protests. Origins and student mobilization. Students organized protests, drawing thousands of participants. Her demands included democratic reforms and an end to authoritarian practices. Inspired by the Hunger Games, protesters adopted a three-fingered salute as a symbol of resistance. The movement lacked a clear leader, relying on social media for organization. Challenges and escalation. Protests turned violent as police used tear gas and rubber bullets. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted street protests, but the movement persisted. Police harassment, prosecutions, and internal conflicts impacted the youth-led demonstrations. Demands for monarchy reform. Initially focused on government reforms, the protests later expanded to include unprecedented calls, the reform of the Thai monarchy. In August 2020, student groups publicly demanded monarchy reform, breaking a long-standing taboo. A September rally challenged King Vajiralongkorn, and the movement gained momentum. Government responses, an ongoing struggle. The government used emergency decrees, arbitrary detention, and media censorship to suppress protests. Clashes between protesters, police, and royalists intensified. Despite challenges, the movement continued, with protesters advocating for constitutional amendments and monarchy reform. Impact and uncertain future. The first protester died in October 2021, highlighting the risks faced by activists. The upcoming general election in 2023 may determine the movement's future trajectory. The courage and determination of Thai students in advocating for change deserve recognition. March for Our Lives, Port 2018. Port 2018 Student-Led Advocacy for Gun Control. In 2018, the March for Our Lives movement emerged as a powerful force advocating for gun control. Here are the key points about this significant student-led initiative. Origins and context. The March for Our Lives movement was sparked by the tragic Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, on Valentine's Day in 2018. Students from the school founded Never Again MSD and began organizing a rally called March for Our Lives. On March 24, 2018, hundreds of rallies took place across the United States. Between 1 to 2 million people participated, making it one of the largest student-led protests since the Vietnam War. Demands and advocacy. Students called for increased gun regulations, including the assault weapons sealing the filmmaker, bank, banning the sale of high-capacity magazines and bump stocks in the United States. Global impact. The movement gained international attention, with solidarity rallies organized across the world. As America continues to grapple with frequent mass shootings, students remain a powerful force in the fight for change. Legacy and ongoing struggle, the courage and determination of young activists during the March for Our Lives continue to inspire efforts towards gun control and safety. The Velvet Revolution, 1989, a peaceful overthrow of communism. In 1989, the Velvet Revolution unfolded in Czechoslovakia, marking a pivotal moment in history. Here are the key details. Background and suppression. After World War II, Czechoslovakia was governed by a communist party that stifled dissent and criticism. On November 17, 1989, 9 days after the fall of the Berlin Wall, students gathered in Prague to commemorate the 50th anniversary of a protester's death during a demonstration against Nazi occupation. The student protest evolved into an anti-government movement, with students chanting anti-communist slogans. Growing momentum. Despite police violence, protests expanded to other cities. On November 20, 500,000 protesters assembled in Wenceslas Square. 8 days later, the Communist Party leadership resigned, paving the way for a new anti-communist government. Václav Havel's leadership. Václav Havel, a poet, playwright, and prominent figure in the democratic movement, was elected president. The Czech and Slovak regions eventually separated, and in 1993, Havel became the first president of the newly formed Czech Republic. Revolution. Establishment of democracy and free elections. Protection of civil rights. Economic reform. Peaceful transition. The revolution earned its name due to the relative ease with Václav Havel's election completed the transformation, allowing future generations to enjoy the benefits of freedom, including free speech and the right to gather. The Soweto Uprising, 1976, a defiant stand against apartheid. In 1976, the Soweto Uprising erupted in South Africa, leaving an indelible mark on history. Here are the key details. Background and apartheid injustice. The apartheid system perpetuated violence and discrimination against Black South Africans from 1948 to 1991. Unequal education was a central aspect of apartheid. The Bantu Education Act of 1953 brought Black South African education under national government control, resulting in poorly maintained schools and limited opportunities for Black teachers. We applied to suffer first to get unclear health student to get unshot with the rhetoric of the student and clothes. First, student elder will be that appears or quite student to project supplement. Armed police responded violently, resulting in the deaths of 176 to 700 people and injuries to about 1,000. In that strike, anti-apartheid movement. Students persisted in organizing and anti-apartheid protests. International attention and condemnation of the apartheid regime grew, prompting global action. Pressure on universities and the end of apartheid Worldwide groups urged universities to divest from corporations supporting the South African government. These efforts set the stage for the eventual end of apartheid. Legacy and National Youth Day. June 16th is National Youth Day in South Africa, commemorating the courage and sacrifice of those who stood up against injustice during the Soweto uprising. The Soweto uprising remains a testament to the resilience of youth and their unwavering commitment to justice. The Tlatelolco Massacre, the tragic chapter in Mexico's history. The Tlatelolco Massacre unfolded on the afternoon and night of October 2nd, 1968, in the Plaza de las Tres Culturas. The stateway was forward to discover the possible. The year 1968, in Finland. At the course of the Finland ground, secretly reflected in the classroom, students, workers, and marginalized urban communities forged alliances, challenging the political regime. There was no central leader. Families, neighborhoods, and whole apartment buildings joined the movement. The uprising, the student protests began after riot police failed to quell a fight between high school students. When the police couldn't control the situation, the army intervened, resulting in the death of several students. Over the following months, protests against oppression and violence escalated. The Tlatelolco Massacre. On October 2nd, 1968, thousands gathered at the Three Culture Square in the Tlatelolco housing complex. Soldiers arrived to arrest the leaders, but when gunshots rang out, they opened fire on the crowd. Government sources claimed only 4 deaths, but witness accounts described hundreds of bodies. The disputed death toll, the actual death toll, remains uncertain. Estimates range from 300 to 400, with eyewitnesses reporting hundreds dead. American analyst Kate Doyle documented 44 deaths, according to U.S. National Security Archives. Additionally, 1,345 people were arrested during the events. Legacy and National Day of Mourning. A formal investigation was delayed for decades, leaving unanswered questions. Official documents suggest that a special branch of the military posted snipers to provoke the troops. October 2nd is now recognized as a National Day of Mourning, symbolizing resistance against authoritarianism. The Tlatelolco Massacre serves as a somber reminder of the sacrifices made by those who stood up for justice. The Kent State University. The Kent State University shooting, 1970, a tragic turning point. The Kent State shootings, also known as the May 4th Massacre, left an indelible mark on American history. Here are the key details. Background and context. In 1970, during the Vietnam War, tensions ran high on college campuses across the United States. On May 4, at Kent State University in Ohio, students gathered to protest the expanding U.S. involvement in the war, the presence of the National Guard on campus, and the draft. The tragic event, 28 National Guard soldiers fired approximately 67 rounds in just 13 seconds. 4 students were killed and 9 others were wounded. 1 student suffered permanent paralysis. Among the victims were Allison Krauss, Jeffrey Glenn Miller, Sandra Lee Scheuer, and William Knox Schroeder. Immediate outrage and student strike. The shooting sparked massive outrage on campuses nationwide. Over 4 million students participated in organized walkouts at hundreds of universities, colleges, and high schools. Public opinion intensified during an already contentious time regarding the U.S. role in the Vietnam War. Legal proceedings and acquittal. 8 shooters faced charges related to depriving students of their civil rights, but were acquitted in a bench trial. The trial judge emphasized that the use of force against demonstrators was deplorable. Legacy and anti-war sentiment. The Kent State campus shut down and a nationwide student strike unfolded. Anti-Vietnam War protests, including the one at Kent State, transformed student activism, raising the stakes of protesting and solidifying an anti-war sentiment. The Pulitzer Prize-winning photo by John Philo, capturing a 14-year-old girl crouched over a victim's body, remains a haunting reminder of that tragic day. The Greensboro sit-ins were a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement, demonstrating the power of nonviolent protest. Here are the key details. In 1960, 4 black students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College planned a sit-in at Woolworth's in Greensboro, North Carolina. On February 1st, they sat at the segregated lunch counter and refused to leave when denied service. A local white businessman alerted the media, sparking a series of nonviolent protests. Impact and spread the Greensboro sit-ins led to the F.W. Woolworth Company removing its policy of racial segregation in its southern stores. Though not the first sit-ins of the civil rights movement, they became the best known and a catalyst for subsequent sit-ins. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, was formed as a result. Widespread movement. By February 5th, around 300 student protesters participated at Woolworth's. The sit-in movement spread to other college towns, including segregated libraries, hotels, and businesses. Over the summer, many establishments began integrating, including the Greensboro Woolworths. 7 cities and peaceful protests. The sit-in movement reached other southern cities like Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, Richmond, Virginia, and Lexington, Kentucky. While most protests were peaceful, there were instances of violence, such as in Chattanooga, Tennessee. In Jackson, Mississippi, students from Tougaloo College staged a sit-in in 1963. Legacy and desegregation. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 mandated desegregation in public accommodations. The former Woolworth in Greensboro now houses the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, preserving this historic moment. The Greensboro sit-ins exemplify the courage and determination of those who fought for equality. The White Rose stands as a remarkable example of courage and resistance during one of history's darkest periods. Here are the key details about this nonviolent intellectual group. Founding and context. Founded by medical students, the White Rose emerged in Nazi Germany. Witnessing SS troops, atrocities against Jewish civilians on the Eastern Front compelled them to take action. Siblings, Hans and Sophie Scholl, played central roles. Leaflets and graffiti. The group anonymously published leaflets opposing the Nazi regime. They painted graffiti on Munich buildings with phrases like, "Down with Hitler." Arrest and trial. The White Rose was caught spreading leaflets and faced a sham trial. Hans, Sophie Scholl, and Christoph Probst were executed by guillotine. Sophie defiantly wrote Freiheit on her indictment. Leaflet campaign. The group authored 6 leaflets denouncing Nazi crimes and oppression. They openly condemned the persecution and mass murder of Jews in their second leaflet. Allied planes dropped their final leaflet over Germany in July 1943. Legacy and inspiration. The White Rose is highly respected in Germany and abroad. Their resistance continues to inspire young activists fighting for justice. The White Rose's unwavering commitment to freedom remains a beacon of hope. The Fisk University protests of 1924 to 1925 were a significant student-led movement that challenged the restrictive policies of Fisk University's president, Fayette McKenzie. Here are the key details. Background in Mackenzie's policies. Fisk University, located in Nashville, Tennessee, faced restrictions imposed by President Fayette McKenzie. McKenzie discontinued the school's magazine and newspaper, canceled the baseball team, cut the football team's budget, and outlawed most extracurricular activities. Strict dress codes for women were enforced, and interactions between male and female students were restricted. Rib. B. B. Du Bois's critique in May 1924. Du Bois, an alumnus of Fisk, delivered a speech criticizing Mackenzie's policies. Du Bois particularly condemned Mackenzie's practice of taking black female students to sing in white men's clubs to raise money for the university. Du Bois urged Black America not to send their children to Fisk until Mackenzie was removed. Student demands and protests. Students and alumni demanded changes, initially gaining Mackenzie's agreement to some compromises. However, Mackenzie eventually refused to cooperate with student leaders. In March, male students protested peacefully, carrying placards demanding change. Police intervention and continued debate. Mackenzie called in all-white police, who broke into and searched the men's dormitory. The opinions in black and white communities remained divided. The Fisk University protests left a lasting impact on the institution and its governance. W.E.B. Du Bois's passionate critique and the students' peaceful protests challenged the status quo and paved the way for change. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave your comments and suggestions. Your comments are our encouragement to produce more videos and to continue to improve our content. Please subscribe and see you next video.